that participants under full screen. Part of our Taking Stock in Elul series, and so Yasher Koach on heeding the call of doing the work of Elul, which is introspective. There's learning, and it's an active month. It really is an active month. Taking stock isn't just a mental activity. It's there's a lot of doing involved. So I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules and dinner time to come together in this session. I'm going to share my screen. What I'd like to do tonight is take us through a journey through the Machzor of the three main themes of the holiday. The themes are recognized by the names of the holiday. So if you had to say, what are other than Rosh Hashanah, what are some of the other names that you recall of this the holiday? And this is interactive. So I see you may have been muted, which is probably good because there's a lot of background noise. Yeah, just like sidebar, Zoom etiquette, right? You try to stay muted unless you want to speak and participate, answer a question, ask a question, interject with a part of the conversation we're having. That is 100% encouraged. But the talking about what you're having for breakfast during dinner as a background conversation, that's why we mute, so we're not all listening to that kind of thing. So back to the question, what are some of the other names for
Yom HaZikaron?
Yes, Yom HaZikaron. So that is one of the themes. Yes, Yom Teruah. Okay, and
Yomim Doraim.
Yeah, oh yes, the high holy days. Some people take the high part in their own way, interpretation, but the way that it comes to us is the Norah, which is these days of awe. Okay, so we had Yom Teruah, so that's the theme we'll follow, which is about the shofar and the theme of the shofar. We won't do too much on that because Johanna has an entire class on that, but we do have to mention it. So whatever overlap, I hope she'll forgive me, which I know she usually does, because we often have overlapping subjects, and that's okay. I think the more the merrier. So we'll have a little bit of Yom Teruah, it's the day of trembling, which we'll see how that's associated with the shofar. And then we also have Yom Hadin, which is the day of judgment. So we're going to talk about what is the day of judgment. How does that, well, we know, we're standing before God, being judged, but what is that really about? The theme there, who's the judge? Well, you don't have to unmute to answer that, right? So God's the judge, right? And one of the functions of judges on earth is to be an arbiter, right, of law, an adjudicator. And so there's this aspect of God as king and judge, okay? But it comes to as the king, right? That's really what we'll be focusing on, Malchuyot. So, and did anyone say Yom HaZikaron?
Yes, I did.
Good, thank you. The day, right? So memory, we are remembering. So we're not just talking about Rosh Hashanah, we're talking about Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. But in the Musaf service of Rosh Hashanah, we have the Malchuyot, Zichronot, and Shofarot, so section of the Musaf service. And so, we'll find some of the text in there. What I'd like to present tonight's exploration is doing a little bit of singing together. I may need to do a little bit of singing on my own if you're not able to, if we're not able to share the texts very well. But hopefully you'll remember some of these melodies. Right? So we'll be doing a little bit of singing, a little more talking than singing. Okay, so I'm eager to hear your interpretations as well. And, sometimes with Zoom, like this is just for me, sometimes I feel like it's a little bit dissociative, like I'm talking. So, people are muted or their screens are off. There's a bit of an adjustment that I'm still making. So I just encourage you to ask questions when you have them, to ask questions even of clarifying. I want to get the whole Jew-barrassment thing out of the way, okay? If I'm going on yeshiva-ish and saying words you don't even know what I'm talking about, please interrupt me. There is an icon you can post that's a hand, but you can literally just raise your hand. I can see everybody. We're in gallery view, not that many of us, unless there's a whole other page. No, I don't think so. Whoops. Okay, so I can see everybody at this point, or you can just simply interrupt. Okay, I don't want you to walk away from this session asking yourself, what was that about? I really want you to have something to take away and to take into your holiday celebration this year. Okay, all right, any questions before we begin? Okay, so I'll share my screen. Easier said than done. Hold on. Here we go. Okay. All right, you could see that. Can you see that? Yes? What can you see? Can you see a text that says melody and meaning from the Machzor? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
All right, great. So now in the view that I have, I cannot see everybody at the same time. So that being the case, if you want to ask a question, you will need to unmute and let me know. Okay. All right, so the three names for Rosh Hashanah, we have them right here. We've already discussed them. We'll move on. How would you characterize the king? Okay, so the first theme we're going to look at is Yom Hadin as the king, the Melech, as, like a central idea of the holiday. What does that king mean to you? All right, I'm going to unshare so you don't read my notes, okay? We'll go back to that. So what does the king mean to you? Hamelech.
Well, the king is the one who makes the rules and who enforces them.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Like the...
Right.
And,
So,
and
yeah, Karen?
maybe the is really like the king, like, the big one. There's like nothing above that. Maybe it's almost the title.
Okay. I'm going to go with that one, okay? Because
Like
go ahead.
king of all.
The king of all, yes. Okay, good. Anyone else? Do
Like
you feel?
petitioning the king for forgiveness.
Forgiveness.
Sorry, Martha?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we have different perceptions of king. If you think of the Disney kings, or you think of the mean, miserable kings that you've known historically, I think in this term of king, we think of grand but good. I don't think it's a scary king. So I think of it's king in terms of powerful, but powerful with grace. Sounds a little Gentile, but whatever.
No, it does. Only because those words have taken on new meanings through Christianity. But grace is chaim. Grace is, like Martha was teaching about last week, the king is in the field because the king loves us. And the king wants to know all about us and what's going on in our lives. That is one aspect of the king, of Hamelech, that we'll explore. Okay? And, what others have said, Karen's Hamelech, the king, right? Not Elvis Presley, although for some could be, right? But Hamelech, okay? Any other comments before we move on? Eileen?
One more. It's almost like it's the king of all that ever was, now, and all that will ever be forever.
Yes, okay, right? And we say those lines. Adonai, Adonai Melech, Adonai Malach, Adonai Yimloch Le'olam Va'ed. One of my favorite lines from the High Holiday Service, which is actually just a basic line from the Kedusha that we say every single day, not just even on Shabbos, but it's right there in the Kedusha that we say all the time. Okay, so good. These are all great answers. I'm going to re-share my screen. And I want to look at a text and then I want to sing something, okay? So this is a text here by Simon Jacobson. It's from 60 Days, a book that many of us have been referencing. It's a beautiful book. It's kind of a workbook journal, and you can actually subscribe to his emails, and he'll send like his website or whatever. He'll send you an email every day with a little bit of a Elul Torah for you to be thinking about throughout the 60 days. 60 days because he takes us all the way from the first of Elul all the way through Elul, all the way through Tishrei. So not just 30 days. Hopefully I have no typos in here, but I can't promise. So who would someone love to read this? Any volunteers who enjoy reading out loud?
I'll do it.
Okay.
The idea of Rosh Hashanah as the day when we coronate King as the King of the universe may be one of the strangest and hardest to accept for those of us raised in modern democratic societies. To us, kings are corrupt despots at worst and characters out of fairy tales at best. Yet this idea is essential to the observance of Rosh Hashanah, because in the language of Judaism, a king is a metaphor for absolute authority. On Rosh Hashanah, we accept our universal ourselves, God as the one and only absolute authority who rules over every aspect of our lives, and we will submit to his judgment, which we believe will be merciful, because our king is also our father, Avinu Malkeinu. When we accept God's absolute authority over us, we do not annihilate our own individuality. On the contrary, we only empower it. When we acknowledge God as our king, we simultaneously recognize the divinity of ourselves, the dignity and majesty of having been created in the divine image. This idea fills us with unbridled joy and points out the paradox of Rosh Hashanah, because Rosh Hashanah is a day when we stand before the Supreme King and tremendously accept the burden of his sovereignty. But it is also a festival in which we celebrate amidst much feasting and rejoicing.
Just a little bit more here.
Okay, I can't see it yet. Thank you. Such is the nature of a coronation. It is an event that combines trepidation and joy, awe and celebration. For true kingship, as opposed to mere rulership, derives from the willful submission of a people to their sovereign. So the coronation of a king includes a display of reverence and awe on the part of the people, conveying their submission to the king, as well as the joy which affirms that their submission is something they wholeheartedly desire. The joy and celebration of Rosh Hashanah is called
Gilu, Beroadah.
Barodah, celebration wrapped in trembling. When we stand before the king, we feel such joy that we want to dance. but we cannot in respect to the king. So the joy must be packaged in a more appropriate expression. Only after we leave the palace or Sukkot can we begin celebrating with unbridled expression.
Thank you. So what makes this king, what makes God our king? Right? This is not a despot. According to this Hasidic interpretation, we agree. This is part of a coronation ceremony. We lovingly accept the kingship. We lovingly accept the rule. And we do so with joy, the joy that we feel on the new year and the new beginning, and this gift that we have of another year of life, so precious. But we also have this trepidation. And those two things together, the joy and the trepidation, he calls it the Gilu Baroadah, that you're rejoicing, but it's wrapped up in trepidation. It's wrapped up in fear. It's like you want to explode with happiness, but like you can't, because it wouldn't be appropriate at that moment. Like, we're in front of the Sefer Torah, like the rabbi's giving a sermon. Like, no, you got to stay like calm, keep praying, keep doing the work. And we do the work, and we're excited, but it's an inner contentment that we only let party and come out at Sukkot, which we are supposed to celebrate at Sukkot. And one of, not to be on a soapbox, but I'm in a Zoom box, so I guess it's similar, that so many of our people, they, as we know, it's been said so many times, they'll come to Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, they know that's important to come, to attend, but they miss, so they get the Ra'adah, they get the fear and trembling, but they miss out on the moment when we let when we let go of the fear and trembling and just have pure joy, which is Sukkot and Simchat Torah. I feel like a vision of redemption would be when the Jewish people, fill the sanctuaries for Sukkot and Simchat Torah, as this, that's what we hope for. So I want to share with you, or jog your memory, and please sing along, the beginning of the Shacharit service, which I suspect a lot of people miss because it's kind of early. It comes right after Psukei de Zimra. It, to me, is my favorite part of the entire service. And I've even missed it in the past number of years. I'm with the kids, or I'm with a family service, or doing something. I don't always get to hear the opening words of Shacharit, which are just simply Hamelech. But this is how the melody was taught to me. It's Hamelech. It could take minutes of just the ha ha ha, as Karen said, the king. Just for the cantor to get to the word king, just dwelling on the king, to me is like, hands down, one of the most meaningful parts of the service. And so many of us, we only get to hear, Unatana Tokef, which Rabbi David will be talking about, later on in our series. Who shall live and who shall die? But before whom do we live? Hamelech, the king. So you may have your favorite version of Hamelech that you heard a cantor once sing, and there are many out there, but I feel like it's been said it's a Sinai melody. So cantors have various, sort of variations on the theme of what I just sang. Okay, I'm going to share some more. Okay, great. So then we come to the Kedusha, but this line, also we're still on kingship here, because I'm just giving us a few different versions of malchuyot, of kingship, of majesty, maybe we should call it, right? Because maybe you don't like that. Maybe you don't like the idea of God as a king. Maybe God is the sovereign ruler. You know, what happens when we start translating? Hamelech is the king. But in English, when we hear king, that may become, like what Martha was saying, a very narrow sort of interpretation or vision, you know, like a Disney cartoon or a despot. Like, it's not a big enough word for Hamelech. Hamelech's actually the same amount of letters, 4 letters, but Hamelech packs a bigger punch. It allows for more than just king, the king. Okay, so this Melech of ours is Yimloch Adonai Le'olam, Elohayich Tzion L'dor Vador, as someone mentioned earlier. That's God will reign forever, the ruler of Zion from generation to generation. I love this line, and it comes up a couple of times in the service, in the Musaf service, and it's also picked up in Shachari with Adonai Melech, Adonai Malach, Adonai Yimloch Le'olam Va'ed. God reigns, God is reigning, God will reign, not from the sky, you know what I mean, ruling over us forever. And that idea of God as eternal is fundamental. It's a fundamental idea in Judaism. And I tend to teach this a lot, this concept, so forgive me if you've heard it a number of times. But one of the most resonating names of God, there are many, right? Many names of God, but one of my favorites is the Ehiyah Asher Ehiyah, the Yud Hey Vav Hey, the Tetragrammaton. Okay, that's the letters Yud Hey Vav Hey, which within those letters, I don't have the Hebrew in front of me, you'll have to just imagine it, okay? Yud Hey Vav Hey kind of stands for Hu Hayah, God was, Hu Hoveh, who he is, the Hu Yihiyeh, and he will be. That this God that's transcendent of, you know, all time, that God is God, you know, God is a verb, that catchy title of a book, God is a verb, that God is that verb to be. That verb to be, that God is, was, will be, that's also encompassed in this Hamelech that we are singing to, that we are praying about. And I think the addendum to that, you know, when you combine the Yud Hey Vav Hey, which is also known as the Tetragrammaton or the ineffable name of God, and you associate that with the God that appeared to Moses at the burning bush, Moses said, "What's your name?" And God said, "Ehiyah Asher Ehiyah, be what I will be. I will be that I will be," right? It's kind of untranslatable. And then a few verses later, God says, "And I will be with you. And I will be with you." I can cry from that, okay? Because I think that is just like so stunning that, you know, we tend to think, and on Rosh Hashanah, we are thinking of God as Hamelech, but this Hamelech is also the one who is with us. Ehiyeh imcha, God says to Moses, I'm going to be with you. Okay? And that, just to, it's a mitzvah, it's a commandment to teach something in the name of the person who taught it to you. So that little swirl there that I just gave over, I had the zechut, the merit of sitting with Dr. Stephen Geller. I think David, if he's still here, Rabbi David will laugh. We used to have these God talks at the seminary at JTS, which were an opportunity for the students to hear what the professors' theology. You know, they're just at JTS to teach us classes. They don't have to talk to us about God. It's academia. and this one particular professor who was taught Bible as literature, okay? And his personality was, you know, let's just not speak Lashon Hara. There were moments of, well, anyway, it was a pretty dry class, and you would never know what his theology was. And in this, like, little, you know, students packed the halls, like, to hear him give this talk, his God talk. And this professor, you would never never guess, that he had such an intimate, narration of his understanding of God. Yeah, imcha, I will be with you. He said that is his understanding of God. And I was like, woo, taking that. Take that to go. So, okay. To follow along Malchiot just a bit more here. Another piece to pay attention to is Aleinu. Okay, I'm going to try to share my screen again. And I am sharing it, but I want to share something else. Second. Okay, you might be thinking, why did you want to talk to us about Aleinu? Well, why? Because Aleinu, while it is now in every service, Shachri, Mincha, Mari, where we always end the service with Aleinu, it is actually one of the first prayers that we know of. And it's attributed to Rav, and it was written for Rosh Hashanah, for the high holidays. And it was this prayer that everyone would bow, would prostrate on their knees, on the floor, forehead to the floor. Everybody would do it. That was just part of this. Ve'anachnu korim u'mishtachavim u'modim, right here. And the reason why we don't do it all the time anymore is because other traditions, and this is a note that this text that I took from is from the Lev Shalom Machzor. It's because other traditions now use the prostrating so much that now, like, to distinguish ourselves from the other nations, we don't. We distinguish ourselves by not bowing down anymore, but we were the first. And so now we don't do it anymore, except it's that tradition is preserved for the Yamim Noraim, for the high holidays. In most of our congregations, maybe just the clergy or a few other participants will go fully down onto the floor. You definitely want to be able to get back up again if that's something you're going to choose to do, right? But that was something like quite an image that everybody would do that. And, I'll tell you from my own experience of doing it, and I'd like to hear if others have, an experience of doing that. Talk about humility. I mean, that is being humbled to get down like that, And for me, I'm just candid here, sharing with you, as a prayer leader, to do that in front of everyone. I feel like because I recognize most people aren't doing it. I feel like I'm taking it on, not just for myself, but for the community, for the congregation. So it's like I feel everyone with me in going all the way down to the floor. And thank God Charlie's there to help pick me up, because sometimes I'm wearing shoes that it would be impossible. I'm thinking there were some wonderful people who came before him who had that job. Just spacing right now, but we'll get back to that. So Aleinu, so the melody. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות ולא שמענו כמשפחות האדמה שלא שם חלקנו כהם וגורלנו Kechol hamonam. And then we all go down. Vanachnu korim umishachavim umodim Lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu. And by then, we're usually standing. So without even going past the first line, okay, I wanted to highlight this and then I'll unshare for a moment and then we'll go back to another text. It is upon us. You know, why is Aleinu? Like, why does Aleinu get so much play? Like, what's it about Aleinu, right? Well, first of all, people love Aleinu because it's the end of the service, right? Usually, except for on Yom Kippur, in which it signifies that we have a long way to go. But Aleinu, it is upon us. When we come to this line, it's upon us. When you look around, you say, ain't nobody here but us chickens. Because it's upon us to praise the master of all, Adonai Kol. To give greatness, to give our all we got to the Yotzer Bereshit, to the creator of the world. Because this is our special lot. That's what this prayer is saying. It's for us to do. It's for us to do, and only us to do. So, while we may be thinking at times, oh, Aleinu, good, almost done, it's always upon us to do this work. And even when we're not completely going down, putting our head on the floor and that whole thing, the intention is there to feel that way when we say this prayer. And one of the saddest pieces to me about what happened to Aleinu is that like the melody I just sang to you, like that signifies, I think, the magnitude of this song, of what it deserves, of what this prayer deserves. When we start singing, Vehuna tashamayim beyoser haaretz, that is literally the itsy bitsy spider went up the water spout. And when we say bayom hahu bayom, it's the farmer in the dell, the farmer in the dell. Yeah, it is. Hi ho the chariot, the army, and it is. And it's like, that was a great way to get everybody to learn Aleinu of every age. But in my opinion, I'm not alone, it wasn't, it was a bit of a disservice to the magnitude of the prayer. All right, before I move on, so just a little break for some questions or comments. None?
I want to say, Rabbi, I really appreciate that last comment you made about Aleinu. And you verbalized something that I have felt, but I don't know that I had the words to describe the melody and how it makes it feel, maybe not quite trite, but hearing you chant the melody for the High Holy Days just made it very real for me. So I never quite thought about it that way. So thank you.
Yeah, good. Okay, other comments? Okay, so I used so much time on Malchut. We're not even gonna have time to do everything that I'd planned to do tonight, but that's okay. So, well, whatever we have time to do. It's important not to leave the conversation about Malchut without talking about what we call the immanent God, the God who is close to us. And so in addition to talking about God as the king, the ruler, the sovereign, right, what is the other, like the tandem word that we tend to use in the high holiday season? Avinu Malkeinu, right? God, our Father, our Father, our King. our Father, our King. Avinu Malkeinu, Chaneinu V'aneinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chaneinu V'aneinu, Yein Banu Masim, Aseh Imanu, Tzedaka v'chesed, Aseh imanu tzedaka v'chesed v'hoshienu. When we come to Avinu Malkeinu, we are looking at the other side. We're saying God is not just, that God that we've been describing, we've been talking about, the transcendent God. God is also close like a father. There's the image of the God who tends to us like a shepherd and a sheep, right? But then there's a whole other slew of adjectives to describe God. And I want to look at that in a second. This is from Ernst Simon. This is from the Rosh Hashanah anthology. Avinu Malkeinu, it is he who on the birthday of his world comforts his children and makes them brothers and sisters, all the loving fathers and mothers and their threatened and rescued children. As it always does here too, the thing most individual depends on the universal. The world is reborn in the individual human being. Oh, it's a lot to unpack there. But this idea that we're all interconnected and equalized in some way on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, when we stand before God as our Father, God is the King, and it's like we can just be that. We can allow that feeling, that metaphor to unfold, that we are equalized sisters and brothers, that we're all, children here together, under the sheltering wing of God. And you wouldn't necessarily get that from Avinu Malkeinu. And so there have been other texts, and in our Machzor, that's not it. Our Machzor, that's not it either. Sorry. I have a lot of things over here. Scan, here we go. Our Machzor has other ways of looking at Avinu Malkeinu, and I'm happy that they have this, because there's an alternative version. All right, I don't know if you've paid attention to that, if you've noticed it, if you've used it, if you've connected to it, but some people feel maybe put off by the very sort of redundant or forceful image of Avinu Malkeinu, of Father, our King, our Father, our King, and have looked for, a more contemporary or relatable metaphor for God. And there are many that are already in the tradition. It was just a question of plucking them out of our tradition and compiling them together in the Machzor. So we have Boreinu Mivarchenu. We have our Creator, the one who blesses us. I think I have the English somewhere here. Here are just some examples. Our protector, our savior, our support, our helper, our fortress, our guardian, our benefactor.
Rabbi, are you trying to show us a different page?
Oh,
we still have the original
you're not
one.
seeing that?
Oh.
Ugh, okay. All right. Well, did you hear what I said?
Yeah.
Okay. I know what I did wrong, so I'm going to stop share. Right. So if you're looking for that in the Machzor, let me try this again. This is not what I was sharing before, but you can find the alternative Avinu Malkeinu on page 93 of the Machzor. Just one example. By the way, I'm happy to share this document and my, some of the other handouts that accompany this. If you just message me, I'll send them to you after the class. So there's just one more piece that I want to share with you. All right, but you get the idea, right? Because I felt like that was an important idea that I wanted to pass along, that there's an alternative reading to Avinu Malkeinu that is more inclusive, has feminist aspects, more universal language of an understanding or a theology that you can incorporate into your own prayers, and they're right there in the Machzor. Going into the most, let's say, intimate now version or understanding of God, we have the piyut, which is called Ya Ana Amtzacha, which is on page 231. Tammy Stewart actually wrote a setting to this that she worked on, with Joyce. I think she wrote it, or Joyce, our voice coach, wrote it. And the words are, and this is in the Yom Kippur service now, in the Slichot service. And the words are, Ya Ana Amtza'acha. This is written by Rabbi Yehuda Halevi on the Spanish Payatan from 1075 to 1141. And he says, Adonai, where shall I find you? High and hidden is your place. And where shall I not find you? The world is full of your glory. I sought your closeness. I called to you with all my heart. And here's the best line. And going out to meet you, I found you coming toward me. And going out to meet you, I found you coming toward me. Very intense. I just absolutely love that. And I don't really know if there's a melody that I love, but we'll be posting the version that Tammy did the last couple of years. And it's called Ya Ana Amtzacha. The one piyut that one of the cancers taught to me was had a refrain. Kivod Chamale Olam, Kivod Chamale Olam, Ya Ana Amtzacha, Kivod Chamale Olam. That your glory fills the world. So in the idea of the Malchuyot, of the kingship aspect, the sovereignty aspect of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we've gone from God is the most high of high, and at the same time, God is very near, and all the things in between. And those themes are reflected throughout the Machzor. Okay, so moving on, Yom HaZikaron is another name, okay, for the holiday. And I want us to be, how much time do we have? That's really a good question. Is this just like a 1 hour session? If we could extend it to an hour and 15 minutes, I think we could get a little more out of it. But if you have to leave at 8, so that's okay. Just log off, okay? So memory, Yom HaZikaron. So I want to ask you, how does memory function in your experience of the holiday? Your own memories, or the idea of God remembering? So let's get a couple of comments here. How does memory function for you? What do you associate with Yom HaZikaron, the day of remembrance, for Rosh Hashanah and or Yom Kippur? Martha?
I think those of us who have lost our parents remember being a child and sitting next to your parents. You remember being a whole family, as opposed to now everybody's all, scattered all around. And I think at the high holidays, because we think of the fact that, supposedly the souls come back, and even though my parents are not buried here, I feel a closeness to my parents, my sister, my aunts, cousins, that I do not feel any other time of the year.
Mm. Yeah. Right. So Yizkor literally means memory, remember. Okay. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, Stuart, and then Eileen.
One of the memories, well, my memory is that over the years living in Houston, my two sons and I used to sing in the choir of our congregation. And on the high holidays, we'd sit up there and look out at the audience and sing all these songs along with the cantor and supporting him, and see the faces of the congregation joining in and singing with us. And it was just a very moving and, I think, thrilling experience to be part of the service in a sense, not only as a congregant, but as in the case of being a leader in some manner of form. And it gave more meaning to me and the family to be part of the actual service in that respect.
Nice. Great. Eileen?
Go ahead.
No, one of the things
I'm
always
sorry.
is,
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead.
is the poem, Who Shall Live and Who Shall Die? And I always see a huge book that's opened from the beginning of Rosh Hashanah to the end of Yom Kippur. And then thinking about who's going to be around, how they're going to be around. And it's not in our hands who's going to be living or dying. It's in God's hands. And then the book closes and you don't have to worry because whatever's going to happen, it's out of your hands.
Wow. That's amazing. Yeah, thank you. Joy? And then Randy? You're muted.
No, I'm not going to talk now. No, it was something.
All right, well, say to something.
No, that's all right. Go ahead, Randy, go ahead.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I actually was, part of what I was going to say is exactly what Martha said, because being down, most of my family's been spread out, but I also do, we had huge family gatherings. My mother had 8 brothers and sisters, and everybody was in Cleveland, so it was just a big family gathering. But the other thing that I remember and has always stuck with me is our rabbi gave, not word for word, but it was basically the same sermon every single year on the holidays. And the reason he said it, I belonged to the temple in Cleveland, and it was a very wealthy, very large congregation. It was Reform. And Rabbi Danielle Silver went up there, and he would talk about being humble, being giving to charity. He would say, I have all this, my kids go to private school, blah, blah, blah. Many of your kids do the same thing. But he always talked about how important it was for us to really remember who we are as people. And that has just stuck with me all these years, because it was just so important that he got up there in front of this congregation and said that.
It's amazing. Oh, yeah, Robert.
Along with Martha and Randy, I have, every year I remember growing up, we were a member of a Reform temple in Brooklyn, a rather large one. And our parents had to buy tickets. They could only buy 2 seats. So my 2 brothers and I never actually could attend the main service. And they would have to come out to give us a ticket to allow us to go back in to sit in one of the seats to participate. So I was always grateful in the congregations we were part of that our daughter Lily was able to be part of the service with us. That was just always very, very important. Along with Randy, our rabbi, Rabbi Steinbeck, always every year would excoriate the congregation that this was the only time he saw them during the year, and told them, you got to be here during the rest of the year. So that was one of the things that he did. Those are some of my memories.
Well, you definitely took note of that. I can't picture being at CBS without you sitting there. So that's it's nice to know that you listen to your rabbi. So I'm going to share again. Right? And of course, the idea of memory is an essential part of the service. Right? We have Yizkor, as we said. There's a whole Zichronot service, which is some of the beautiful lines there. Haben yakir li Ephraim. Is Ephraim not my sweetheart, my beloved? my cherished, my treasured son. I want to talk about that in just a second. I'm going to have to switch screens. Eila Ezkara. We have the whole martyrology service. And sometimes when I say the martyrology service, people, their eyes go blank. They don't know what I'm talking about. That's part of the Musaf service, in which we remember the 10 martyrs who perished under Roman rule, the famous rabbis, and their deaths are gruesomely described. And we wonder, like, why do we have to remember that on Yom Kippur? Yes, we have to remember this on Yom Kippur because it's part of this ideology of Zechut Avot, of the merit of our ancestors. That God, we will never be good enough to merit your forgiveness and your love and your grace, your chen. Don't do it for us. Do it for them. Do it for the heroes of our tradition, for our ancestors, for those who gave their lives to you. Remember them and have pity on us. It's kind of like an essential part of the whole Yom Kippur experience. It's also why we do Yizkor, right? We're remembering our loved ones. God, remember them. Think of them fondly whose souls are with you in heaven. And we remember them, and hopefully, we say their memories are for a blessing, that the blessing of their lives will infuse our lives. It's all very choreographed, the whole Yom Kippur experience. Having gone from just the temple service, when the temple stood, to all these different collage of prayers that we say today, they're all intentionally selected to jog our own emotional experience by remembering the ancestors, by remembering our own ancestors. Remember the avodah service, the service in the Beit HaMikdash of the temple. It's a lot of remembering. And this beautiful line, we don't sing it that much anymore. It's part of the martyrology service. Eila Ezkara, these we remember, and my soul pours out before you. And it's Eila, Eila, Eila Ezkara, v'nafshi ala yeshbecha. Eila, Eila, Eila Ezkara, v'nafshi ala yeshbecha. And whenever I come to the high holidays, this whole idea of remembrance is so central to me. I want to share this with you. I don't know if I'm in a big Zoom box or a little one, but if you can't see, you'll just let me know. I carry around something very special in my machzor. I carry around pictures of my family. Do you see? Oh, okay. So I do that because this is my prayer. This is a prayer of my prayer book, page of my prayer book. And I frequently turn, I must have put my dad in there last year. Because, now I'm going to cry, because he wasn't, he hadn't passed away yet, but I put him in there because I was holding him in my prayers. My mom's in here too. Just tell her that. Okay, so I'm gonna have to add her put her in my prayer. And I have my children, and this is so awkward. I'm sorry. I just love this of my little one. And which way? Here we go. Well, anyway, it's hard to see. That's a path. A path to remind me that I'm on a path. And it's just a boardwalk. That these are my prayers as well. And the memory of them inspires me to do better. And so I give them up as a prayer to Hashem. So that to me is another function of memory on Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, and Harry and time. Okay, good. So probably one of the most poignant memory pieces is from the Zichronot service. I'm going to share my screen. This is like a loved. Oh, here's Ya'ana Amtsacha. Can you see that now? Yeah, that was the "Where are you? Where shall I find you?" And I found you coming toward me. right? Prayer. I hope you'll love that as much as I do. You'll have to look for it though. Page 231, it's in Yom Kippur. Oh, great. Oh, I could rotate it. Hold on. Perfect. Well, this didn't come out so good, but I'll just take you through it. This is the, let me get the page, 161. This is one of my favorite parts of the Machzor. And Haben Yakir Li Ephraim. So this is part of the Zichronot part of the service. It's only in Rosh Hashanah. In the Musaf service, a lot of people have already gone home by the time we get to this, but there are 10 verses that are associated with each of these sections of the kingship, or Malchiot, Zichronot, memory, and Shofarot, the shofar. Okay, so this idea of Zacharti Lach Chesed Ni'urayich, that I'm sorry, I just lost my place here. Where's Haben Yakir Li? Oh, here it is. Okay, so first it's Zacharti lach chesed ne'urayich ahavat kilulotayich lechtech acharai bamidbar ve'eretz lo zeruah. I unshared it because I think it wasn't such a good text to look at, but the idea is that God is remembering in our youth how we followed God like a young bride and groom, like newlyweds. Like, I don't care where we're going, I just want to be with you. And that feeling that we have in our youth, where we have our whole future opened up for us, all the possibilities, all the love, and as we get older, like sometimes we forget, whether we're in a loving relationship with somebody, or just that feeling that we have in life, to be like in love in life, right? If we've lost that along the way, when we come to this prayer, it's a reminder to wake up and come back to your youth, where like everything was possible. Like, how do you tap into that? That's part of the memory piece that we're looking for on the holiday, right? Not to feel disgruntled and the politics and angry and no. Zacharti lach chesed nurach. I remember when you just followed me, and God is saying, this was so amazing. And then the second part that is a highlight from this section is Haben Yakir Li Ephraim, is not Ephraim my dear son. Haben Yakir Li Ephraim im Yeled Shashuim. I love that. Whom I remember fondly, even when I speak against him. So my heart reaches out to him, and I always feel compassion for him, declares Adonai. We are Ephraim. We're Ephraim. We're God's child that God loves, even when we feel like rebuke is happening. We can't forget the love that God has for us. And some of us, it's a very powerful piece. For those of us who are parents, it's a very powerful piece. It really like zets me in the heart every time I get to that. I can never sing it without crying, and I can't even talk about it without crying, because it's such a meaningful piece to me about parenthood and how, the challenges and the love, that like overwhelming sense of love. So if God feels that, even an iota of that for us, it's like, that's a lot of love that we could be feeling if we allow ourselves to tap into that metaphor of being that child. Okay. Finally, just the last couple of minutes here together on Shofarot. that's the section of the service where we highlight that it's related to Yom Teruah, the trembling. The voice of the shofar is trembling. And I don't have to do a whole lot with this because Johanna is taking a whole session on the shofar, so we could look forward to that. But I do want to just share a few thoughts. Where's Johanna? She's still here. So we have Tiku Bachora Shofar. So this is one of my favorites as well. And Lily and I used to duet on this. So when I always think of her, and we're trying to pull off a version of it for this year for one of the recordings. We'll see how it goes. This verse here is in Psalms. Blow the horn on the new moon, on the full moon of our feast day, for it is a law for Israel, ki chok liYisrael, hu mishpat leElohei Yaakov, a ruling of the God of Jacob. And because it says this, this line had become associated with Rosh Hashanah. So this line became kind of an anchor in the Rosh Hashanah service. Every Shabbat and festival has a little insertion in the Mariv service that is like marks the day. So for Shabbat, can you kind of pull out what you think it might be? It's we say it right before the Yikadav Yikadash Merabah every Friday night. Any guesses? It's kind of a trick question. All right, Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat. Woo, right? So that's the Shabbat piece, text. And for Yom Tov, we have the Eila Moadei Hashem, right? And then for Rosh Hashanah, we have this line. Yom Kippur has its own line. So the song that we like to do is Tiku v'chodesh shofar b'kesel yom chageinu ki chok liYisrael hu mishpat leElohei Yaakov. And when you hear that melody, you know you are in Rosh Hashanah, right? Okay. All right. So I think there's like a little bit too much to do here. So I'm just going to try to bring some closing remarks and then turn it over to you if you have any concluding remarks on your end. I just want to highlight here this beautiful piece from Simon Jacobson again. The text right before we blow the shofar, and you could find the shofar service on page 119 when you have a machzor in front of you. This is Psalm 118. We say this all the time. We say it on Hallel, actually. Min hametzar karati anani ba'merchavya. And we don't necessarily sing that melody on Rosh Hashanah, but this verse relates to the idea of the shofar. Now, when you think about the shape of the shofar, it's small at one end, and then it opens up. It opens up. That is the experience that we have in our souls, in our being, that we going from this narrow place, and we open up, our souls open up to God, and God hears us and answers us in that place of what gives us relief, but it's really answers us through a wide space. That shofar that we hear is that like wide space that wakes us up, that we could walk into, right? Pepper's barking her own version of the shofar in the background. I really like this, that the ram, a male sheep, the animal that Abraham sacrificed in place of his son Isaac, is the most gentle and innocent of creatures, untrained by the aggressive nature of other animals. The ram reminds us that our own soul is part of ourself, So it's part of ourselves that is gentle and innocent, untrained by the aggressive, manipulative world we inhabit. And the ram's horn is the simplest of instruments, not carved, molded, or strung like other instruments, which testifies to the ingenuity of man. And it produces the haunting, resonating, piercing cry that most closely approximate the pure sound of the soul. So I know we will have more to say about that. I will share. But the shofar itself, the sound of the shofar itself, right, is part of the liturgy. It's part of the prayers. Like, some of us really just want to hear the shofar. Like, just bring Steve Beckerman up there and let him blow the shofar, and like then we can go home, because there's something about that moment that really opens up that soul. It's so primal. It's so like full body experience that it's like you don't even need all these prayers. You just need that shofar. And it really opens us up to the most inner prayer of our souls. So with that, I am going to conclude my remarks. And let's see, does anyone have any comments, questions before we bring our session to a close?
Go ahead.
Okay.
I want to make a comment.
Yes.
I've enjoyed just sitting here with you in front of me and Mayor beside me, and he's singing on the top of his lungs all of the melodies with you, because he used to sing with his father in church. His father was a Baal Tefillah, and Mayor was right there with him before his voice changed. And he's just singing away with you, and I'm just feeling from it.
The other aspect, when you talk about the sound of the shofar, I remember I was in a choir when I was a youngster, and in the Sana Tokev, I remember in the middle of the Sana Tokev, Uba shofar yitoka, in other words, in the middle of the shofar, the sound of the shofar, and who hears it, and its effect on the congregation.
Joan, do you want to say something?
Thank you.
Thank
I like
you.
listening to you and looking at you and looking at all these faces. Thank you very much.
I'm so glad you can be here.
Me too.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I wish everybody it takes on a new meaning, right? A healthy and a happy new year. And we say, may you be inscribed in the book of life with the sweetness of life. And may these melodies that we share tonight, and I hope the melodies inspired some meaning, and that the meaning maybe inspired some new melodies. We'll see. And I'm very glad that we had this time to discuss, to learn, and to sing together. And I'll see you again soon. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rabbi.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.